everybody feel? Everybody okay? Yeah? Okay, I know everybody's a little beat up at this point, so I'm going to talk. If you guys are interested, I'll keep going. If you guys have questions, I'll answer them, but I'm not going to stay up here if people aren't interested, because I do know that you guys get beat up, you get tired. Largely what I'm going to talk about today is just basic nutrition, basic training. Very simple, actionable stuff that you can actually do that will actually make major changes. I'll give you a little bit about my background, a little bit about who I am, kind of where my business is today and kind of what I do, and then I'll roll into some very basic nutrition stuff. Because my opinion is that most people, they get very focused on extremes. And they don't understand that it's very much about the large 80% of actionables that will make the biggest impact. So most people get very caught up in a supplement that does nothing for you. Most people get very caught up in something like a recovery when they're not even training hard enough that they really need it. And so for most people, if you just do the basic like 150 minutes of cardio that the American Heart Rate Association recommends, or if most people did the basic 2 hours of lifting, they'd be, America as a whole would be in a much better place. If they reduced processed food, if they got 7 hours of quality sleep, they'd be in a stronger position. Whereas most people are like, can I just buy this $30 item supplement and solve all of my problems? You can't. So that's really the crux what we're gonna talk about. But because the message is a little intense, right? I'm a little bit intense.
No.
It's important that we just kind of humanize. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about me, kind of where I am, background, stuff like that. So my name is Jacob Ziemer. I grew up in Portville, New York, population 959 people. My mother was 15 years old. My dad was 23 years old, became pregnant. My dad was 23, an alcoholic, and he kind of included me in that disaster of getting a 15-year-old girl pregnant, which meant when we interacted, he treated me as like that was the mistake, and this was like kind of what ruined his life. My dad and my mom did not stay together for long, but it was very hard growing up with that, both in terms of just like social economic and how I saw myself, right? Probably my major memory of my father, if you ask me, I was about 8 years old. He proceeded to start drinking. I was over for the weekend. He was telling me how my action figures were dolls. A couple of bottles of wine in, he threw them out in front of me. I kept saying, they're action figures, Dad. So kind of a tough start, right? And Mom was really good heart, really well intended, pushed me, made me start taking community college classes at 16. I was the first college graduate of my family. Really pushed me, but really pushed that model of like, hey, you have to produce in order to be loved. Which is fine. I have a really, really wonderful life now. But I like to share that with people because they kind of know where I'm going. Basically, I'm basically going to tell of you, like, hey, work out more, eat less, and cover some of the basics that you should be doing. And also my message is hard to hear because I'm going to break down a lot of nonsense. Like, respectfully, The Rock isn't the size he is because he's eating fish. He's on steroids, right? So I think there's a lot of stuff out there that just is nonsense, and it needs to be called nonsense, okay? So it's tough. It's tough because I'm gonna give some hard pills to swallow, so it just helps to humanize. Today, I have the largest training business on the East Coast. It's still massive. It's kind of dropped down a little bit because I've moved more into coaching, but I'm out of Larchmont, New York. I'm in Westchester, which is right outside of New York City. It was kind of a funny revelation because Brian was kind of like, you're the biggest trainer in the East Coast. And he kind of like branded that because he's Mr. Brand, he knows how to do it. But it was like, oh, this is actually the truth. Like there's a handful of guys like Paul Saladino. Yeah, there's a handful of people, I didn't even realize that. And then we have a very large scale coaching business. And I help person after person change their life. Melissa lost 20 pounds working with me. Greg lost 40 pounds working with me. And we get person after person. I mean, to the point where, you know, it's a business and I'm intense. So the other day I was upset about something and I'm walking into Lifetime and I'm going up the stairs and somebody goes, Jacob. I go, hey, what's up, dude? He goes, Charlie. I go, Charlie, what's up, dude? Charlie's been working with me 6 months. I've seen him once or twice at the gym. He's lost 40 pounds with me, right? So day in and day out, we really help people change their lives in meaningful ways. So I want to go over just very basic stuff with you guys, and then we can kind of move from there, and then I want to open up for questions. And I think I'm going to start with like very basic nutrition, and then move from there. But the core crux of my job is I take on coaching clients. Most of them are body comp, help them lose weight or help them build muscle. And it's really for people who are ready for it, because it's some tough pills to swallow, like you're eating too much, right? Or somebody will be like, I think I'm going through menopause. I'm like, okay, we'll get your labs done. I think my cortisol's high. Okay, we'll get your cortisol. Are they 5 to 25 nanograms over micrograms over a deciliter? Like, what's your numbers? Like, go get your labs ran, and then if there's a problem, let's go fix it. Oh, I'm losing my hair. Okay, let's go see Carlos Wesley. Maybe you need a topical finasteride. So it's really more of that kind of stuff, and like pursuing that to the highest level possible in whatever it is. Because just because you unturn a stone and you get an answer you don't like or you do like, there's a solution. I mean, in the year 2023, you're at a $3,000 event. You probably outspent $4,000 for this weekend at a minimum. There are solutions available to you that you can cover. I say that to say more of like, you're in a really good place in life. If you're at this event, you're at a really cool event. So if there's things in your life like erectile dysfunction or you have bad cholesterol, like there are answers at this point. Go seek them out. And so that's what I help people do, really find the solutions to the problems that they're kind of facing. So at a basic level with nutrition, okay, the most important thing that you can do is have a BMI under 25, okay? BMI, body mass index, is a calculation they do between height and weight. And many people would say, oh, BMI is not relevant. Listen, it's too expensive for everybody to go get a DEXA scan where they look at their body fat, so that's why we run these numbers, okay? DEXA scan is gonna cost thousands of dollars. Your BMI should be below 25. My BMI is 33, it doesn't count because I have very low body fat. But as long as your BMI is low, you're going to lead a longer life. Secondly, you can come through. Good. Reduce the amount of processed food you eat, right? So when we talk about processed food, that doesn't mean anything without context, okay? Let me give you an example. The definition of processed food means any food that went through preparation to cook. So if I go to a grocery store and I pull off some chopped up onions and peppers, that is by definition processed. It has gone through a process. Remember the Liver King? Okay, the Liver King sold beef liver enzymes. You remember this? That is processed. They were grinded and then freeze dried. That is now processed food. It is not the same thing as beef liver. So, but are those bad examples? No, those are perfectly fine. How about if I go out to dinner tonight? Tonight we're going to Shanahan's, this like crazy steakhouse in Denver. They're going to cover it with oil. They're going to heat it to extremely high point temperatures, at which point the olive oil is going to become carcinogenic, and I'm going to eat that, and it's going to be delicious. And that is an example of processed food, and it's okay. It's just you want to mediate that. So there's other things I had in my day, like we were over at Eric's and we had like eggs, and I had some like delicious nut butter this morning. So most of my meals should look like what you think of when you think of health and fitness, but people get very preoccupied again on the minor. So the most important thing is having a low BMI. Secondly, reducing your processed food. And so when I deal with clients, what I really do is help them figure out what their TDE is, their total daily energy expenditure, which is like their resting metabolic rate. There's several ways you can do this. There's calculations online, or you could go get a DEXA scan or run an RMR where you put a mask on and you find out what your resting metabolic rate actually is. It's valuable information. It's not that expensive. You could probably go Google RMR and find a place around you that will charge you like $200-300 to do it. My RMR is 4,240 calories, which is bonkers, right? It means I can eat 4,240 calories just to sustain my muscle tissue, organs, function, liver, if I just sat on a couch, right? So, and that's not even including working out, right? Like right now I diet and I eat about 4,000 calories a day on my diet, and I'm getting leaner and leaner, right? So getting an RMR is a really good step, because then you can figure out how many calories you burn. You can start looking at it. Your wearable that's telling you that you burnt 200 calories when you ran for an hour is lying to you. They're complete horseshit. They're based on arm movement and your heart rate beating up. So you're not burning that many calories. They're off, in a Stanford analysis of it, they're off anywhere from 24 to 72%. Your wearable is inaccurate. 72%. So when you look at those numbers, those numbers are completely inaccurate when you're factoring your workload. So take your RMR and figure maybe start 200 calories above your RMR if you're trying to go on a diet and you're trying to cut weight. Again, 72% of America is overweight. I understand I'm looking at very in-shape people, but most people in here would say I'd like to lose 10 pounds or I'd like to improve this about yourself. that is where you can really start. If I was in a lean bulk, if I was trying to put on some muscle, I would only go about 200 calories above what your actual RMR or your TDE is once you calculate your total daily energy, because you're not going to partition more of that towards muscle. No one puts a pound of muscle on in a week, guys. Any of these programs that tell you you're going to put 9 pounds of muscle on in 8 weeks, anybody tells you you have a product that's going to put a pound of muscle on you, go to a grocery store, grab a family pack of chicken, hold it up, that is 3 pounds of quality tissue in that family pack, and then put that against your body and imagine how much fucking bigger your arm would be if you put 3 fucking chicken breasts around it. And then realize that you are going to spend 2, 3, 5 years to put that kind of size on your arms, not your entire body. You could put 3 pounds of quality tissue on your torso, maybe with a year of hard work, maybe less, depending on how relatively new you are to training. But just have some reality checks, which is one, you're probably fatter than you think you are. Remember, my dad was an alcoholic, so you can't judge me. Kidding. 1, you're probably fatter than you realize. 2, it's harder to build muscle than you realize. And 3, you're probably not working out as hard as you think you are, right? And just in terms of what your Apple Watch is telling you and things like that. So RMR, calculating, that's a really good step and a really good basic place to start. Most of your diet should be lean proteins, proteins that have reduced amount of saturated fat, right? And fruits and vegetables. That should be the foundation of your diet. And you can basically eat as much fruit and vegetables as you want, and you'll be perfectly fine, and you'll be able to maintain a diet. So fruit, vegetables, so I look at the basic of it, lean protein. And again, I'm gonna leave it open for questions, and then we're gonna do the same thing with new training, okay? Now you might say, Jake, I'm advanced, or Jake, I'm at Hplt, I'm in phenomenal shape. Most people don't even have the basics down. They even worry about stuff. Even people, what Brian and I met, he was like, hey, I want to improve a couple things. So we worked on his training. He's great with nutrition. He does a phenomenal job. But most people, even like high performing people, look at, we had, what's the gentleman who ran yesterday, Adrian? Phenomenal, right? Stud. Okay, what's his answer when, what's his answer? Eat a bunch of burritos after I run. Most of your even phenomenal athletes don't have this down. I was talking to Brian, I drove the truck with him this morning. I asked him what % of athletes don't do anything in the NFL. He said 60% don't do anything. They're just genetically gifted. They just can show up and they just have more explosive hips. They can just move better. So even when you were looking at these people on Instagram and you think they have the answers, most of them aren't even doing it. I mean, most of the people I got a hold of Run with Don, and he set that record at 100 miles the fastest time. Like most, even when I get a hold of an athlete, I can remarkably improve them just by getting them to quantitate what they're doing, because most people aren't. They just have a set routine that they just do over and over, and then, as said, it's hard to change habits. And if you don't quantitate your current habits, you can't move it forward. And what I mean by that is like tracking what you're actually eating, or what is your actual sleep, or how is your quality of sleep, things like that. So this is kind of the basic foundation. A lot of people get very caught up in your macros, like carbs and fats. The truth is, and again, I'm talking about general population here. If I was talking to an athlete is somebody who's like, hey, I'm an Olympic lifter, I'm a sprinter, something like that, I would care how many carbohydrates they have. But for general population, I just care about calories and protein. It's called flexible dieting. Okay, and I just care about protein intake, and then for me, I care about fiber intake. And that's all I care about in terms of what somebody's doing. Carbs and fats, in terms of the exact breakdown and how much they matter to actually body composition, are non-existent. It does not matter. I know it's hard for people to wrap around their minds. People still think carbs are the devil. Most of the foods that you guys think are carbs, like, and maybe not you guys, but most subsets, somebody be like, oh, chips have a lot of carbs. Okay, chips have equal amount of carbs and fat. Okay, pizza has a lot of carbs. No, pizza actually has equal amount of carbs and fats. Actually, your very highly palatable foods are a strong mixture of carbs and fats. Pasta has a lot of carbohydrates, but you're probably pouring some sort of sauce on it, like penne vodka, which is covered in fat. So most of you guys are not just eating pasta by itself, unless you're a runner. Most of you guys are just not eating rice by itself, which is a carbohydrate. Some of you might be eating bread, but it's also cooked at a restaurant and covered in butter before it's brought out to you. So most of the highly palatable stuff you're having. So carbs are not the enemy, I guess is my point in saying that. And the exact amount of carbs and fats you have, if you just care about lean body mass and reducing fat, does not matter. I just track people's calories and their protein. One quick side note, and then I actually do want to just open up for questions right away within dieting, and then we'll go on to the next thing. But when we talk about body fat, and I know you guys are smart people, so bear with me, but I'm going to kind of tease you guys for a minute here. This is a percentile. The other way a percentile works is a fraction, and that has a numerator, right? And it has a denominator, okay? So when you think about a body fat percentile, there's your numerator. That is how much fat you have on your body. And then there's denominator, that's your absolute weight. So let's take an example. I'm 200 pounds. I have 20 pounds of fat. 20 pounds of fat, 200 pounds. What's my body fat percentile? 10%, correct, 10%. How can I lower that percentile? Exactly, very good. You guys aren't supposed to answer that. You're not supposed to think about that. So, because what everybody always thinks about is decreasing fat, decreasing fat will reduce that percentile. And also the other way to do it is by increasing lean muscle mass, which is a way to drive down body fat. And that's where a lot of people screw up. If you see it, it's always, and we'll get into this in training, it's the specific adaptations to implied demands. We didn't run a lot yesterday. Elisa's getting ready for a bodybuilding show. I train very heavily. We're going to train legs today. We specifically, when I do cardio, love doing this morning because I love to get into that zone 2 and walk uphill, do things that keep me there. But I only do cardio for one specific reason. And then the rest of my resources of energy are directed towards weight training. So today, I can squat 365, literally ass to grass, do sets of 8, do glute bridges with 4 plates for sets of 10. And it's very specific in that area. But the number one thing, if you were trying to change your body comp, is focusing your energy on weight training with a caloric deficit, and then the nutrients that you're having, very high partition to protein and to fiber, which both have a thermogenic effect. And thermogenic is not only cool to say, right? It's one of those impressive words. But the other thing about thermogenic means it slows down digestion in a positive way. So when I'm having things like protein is either utilized for protein or it has to go through a process called gluconeogenesis. So if I eat way too much protein, that additional protein has to go through a step to convert to glucose, right? And it burns calories in the process. If I eat a lot of fiber, it slows my digestion. A valid strategy for dieting is eating a lot of fiber because you're going to feel so fucking full that you can't eat anything else, right? I can't have, if I get to late at night and I'm 80, 90 grams into fiber and I have anything else to eat around my girlfriend, she will kill me because I will be farting in bed all night and I will not have to worry about losing weight anymore because I'll be dead. So it's a pretty good strategy for, I can't go to the refrigerator now because my girlfriend will beat the shit out of me, right? Yeah, she's strong. She's strong. She's stronger here than here, but she's strong. Trust me. Yeah, for sure. So, what questions do you guys have? Because I just have and then I probably will also talk about labs today too, besides training. But let's start with these very basic.
Why have some diets demonized fruit? I never understood that.
You know, the craziest one to me, honestly, that's out there is the carnivore diet demonizing vegetables. It's so bizarre to me, and I get it, nobody likes vegetables, it's not sexy, but it's just one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And the demonization of fruit, I actually, part of the reason I blew up, I was telling somebody a story today, it took me 2 years to get 10,000 followers on Instagram, and then in the past 6 months I've gone up 190,000 followers, right? And one of the things that blew up is I did a post about frozen fruit, and it got I think I got 80,000 followers off of it, and it got 28,000 reshares, because people have this notion that fruit makes them fat. And we've actually done studies, and I'm not suggesting this, but they've done studies where they've taken people and given them 300 grams of fruit, and grams, measured out fruit, so 300 grams. You know how many ounces that is, Elise? Roughly. So 300 grams of fruit. Elise is a genius. She's a food science degree, but I'm putting her on the spot. But 300 grams, so let's say, I don't know, conservatively 36 ounces of fruit, something like that, has not increased weight at all. They gave people who are already eating a diet. It has so much fiber, it's so satiating, and it's going to steer you away. And I think the biggest thing why people fuck up on their diet is they undereat, binge. Undereat, binge. The other thing I see all the time with clients is, I don't work out, I work out too hard, injured. I don't work out, injured. And then they go from, I work out twice a week barely, to I'm working out 7 days a week. I'm like, why are you doing that? like you can't, shin splints, golfer's elbow, especially, welcome to your 30s, guys. Like, your body needs time to adapt to increase in stimulus. And by the way, you want to squeeze, somebody said to me once, like, hey, can I do 14 sets of biceps in a workout and still build your body? And I said to him, well, you could, but why do you want to? Because more to the point, if I can get gains from 6 sets, I'm going to stay at those 6 sets for as long as I can, right? And then I'm going to move up when I have to. So it's the same thing about just getting the most out of each spot where you can. So, Josh, what do you want?
So, obviously, I get your program. How much of an emphasis and value are you putting on optimized hormones for men and women?
I'll get to that, but that's a huge part. And part of why that's so important is because when you talk about people and people are like, oh, no, it's not just calories, it's all hormones. You're not wrong, but like, let's say you have, I know I'm obnoxious, but let's say you have like your thyroid is, you have a hypothyroid, right? Hypothyroidism. So you can literally, there's literally mathematical equations. You just multiply your TD by 0.3, right? And you reduce it. So now it's 70% of what it would be. Or you go get the thyroid treated. Right? So you have to do that. Like, I won't lie to you, if you're on testosterone replacement, I'm huge on TRT bodybuilding. I think it's the smartest thing in the world. If I had a client that had 900 nanograms over deciliter blood work, and we'll talk about it in more detail, I would tell them don't get on TRT. If I had somebody who had like 700, I'd be like, think about it, let's play with it, depends how old you are. But for like general population, I'm just like, why wouldn't you do this? It's just such an opportunity, and everything we know about low testosterone and like prostate disease, like everything we know about atherosclerosis, like for me, someone even asked me today, like at least asked me when I started TRT, and I said 31, I said, can we have like a non-employer moment for a second? She said, yeah, and I said, okay, well, one, I'm not subject to sleep, right? So if I don't get a good night's sleep or something, I have a lot more stress, my testosterone doesn't drop. Two, for being appropriate. Okay, my dick is like rock hard all the time. 3, I just have an opportunity to, so my libido is like perfect. Like to me, it just makes so much sense to go about that route. And then just the feeling of like happiness. So to me, I would the ultimate is, can you maintain your testosterone being high when you get older? And the number one thing you can do to naturally keep your testosterone high is keep your body fat in that like sweet spot of below 25. Very low body fat, when you start to get into like Eric or Brian, you're gonna start to deal with probably being hypogonadal or low testosterone. It's gonna happen when you get really low. Like probably where I am now, I would start to become very dependent on my diet and my sleep with like 10% body fat. I don't wanna deal with it, fuck it. And I'm not cheating anyone, I'm not competing in any sport. I don't have any ethical issues with that.
What are
But just real quick, to answer yours, it does have an impact and you have to deal with it, and I'll talk about it actually specifically today. Not only that, but other testing you guys should be doing as you're aging, but it does have a factor. Your hormones are important, and having an optimal endocrine. People understand this all the time, like people will be like, oh, I don't want to get too jacked. Like, bro, that's not gonna be a problem. Like, stop. Like, I mean, this has been I've trained hard since I was 14 years old. I grew up in Shittown, USA, going to a YMCA. I train like super rich people now all day. And like, I grew up in like the middle of nowhere at a YMCA, loving it. And like, I can tell you, I've lifted my whole life, and I've never been like, doing anything crazy with it, but just in terms of like gear or anything like that, I've been pretty much natural. And then TRT and like that stuff, I can tell you, like, I'm not obnoxiously jacked. I'm clearly jacked, but it's not like, I'm not like, I don't look like The Rock, and there's a reason for it. It's what's putting in the syringe. I'm going to a doctor. So I would say to you, like, if you want to build muscle, you need to approach it the same way Adrian did, which when you asked him, he's like, how's it feel to be a professional runner? He always saw himself as a professional runner. Mm-hmm. I have always saw myself like, I'm in an event this weekend, I'm gonna have a great time, I'm gonna be part of it, but I'm not fucking up my leg day training on Saturday for anything that's going on. And that's fine, but we already checked out the gym, we know we're gonna do a pendulum squat, and then we know we're gonna do the hack squat there, and then we know we're gonna do the leg curl, and then we're gonna do the RDLs. We already sized it up and looked at it because I take it very fucking seriously. And if you think you're just gonna stumble into success, you're not in any area of your fucking life. Like, listen, if there's something you want, like when I took off my shirt yesterday and people would be like, Jake, put your shirt back on, or they're like joking about Jack. Like, if you think you're just gonna fall into that, Like, you're probably not, dude. Like, if it's worth having, you're probably gonna have to work really fucking hard for it at this day and age. Like, this year, 2023, the world is so fucking competitive. So if you're gonna pursue building muscle, you better be pursuing it as like, this is my fucking side job right now. And you better understand, I think I'm a big believer, you can only have like 3 priorities. Like, I have my girlfriend, and I have my career, and I have this. That's it. Those are all I get. That's it. My girlfriend, my dog, my career, and fitness. That's all I have room for. And I would even tell you that as serious as I am about fitness, it's probably a pretty minor consideration out of all those other 2. Like, I care way more about my career, I care way more about my girlfriend and my dog than those things. And so I'm gonna tell you, I don't know if you can hold on to 4 or 5 things and be good at it anymore, because life has gotten so fucking hard, right? So, this is obnoxious, but I'm gonna. Thank you. I'm going to tell you one more thing. It's a little obnoxious, but I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, said somebody, they were talking about losing body fat, and I said, you never realize how fat you are until you start losing weight. Yes. And I was like, and you never realize how poor you are until you start making money. When I was like a trainer at Equinox making $80,000, I was like, oh, cool. Now like, I have a 7-figure business. I'm like, fuck, I better work hard this month. So, all right, questions?
Yeah, just in terms of like your favorite or recommended carb sources for endurance athletes, like I've read things about
rice.
It spikes your glucose, and then I'm like, maybe I should never eat it. Or
so I have news for you. Like, look, you're going to spike your glucose. If you wake up in the morning and you eat protein, your glucose is going to spike. Because when we talk about protein, I think this is a specific to understand. Protein, its primary mechanism is to convert to glucose. People don't understand that, but that's the first thing protein does. If you don't have any protein in your system, it's going to. And what we call that is the first thing you need 25 grams to get protein synthesis, right? And then the second thing you need is you need to hit 40 grams to prevent protein degradation. And that even increases as you get older. If you're like a guy in your 50s, you should be having 50 grams of protein a sitting, because you're gonna first have to need more to achieve synthesis. You might need 35 grams, and then you might need 45 grams to prevent protein degradation. What does degradation mean? Well, you know what the word means, obviously. So what happens is it means is that some of that protein becomes glucose. It goes through a process of gluconeogenesis and converts over. So everything's going to raise your glucose. Actually, the way to make things less raise your glucose is fiber or dietary fat. So a fattier protein source will decrease your glucose. But this idea that like, glucose has something to do with fat, I've never looked at my glucose in my life. I'm never going to use a fucking monitor. I'm 10% body fat right now. I'm going to be 8% body fat by May. Then I'm going to go, I'm going to dick around this stuff today. I'm going to have a Hardee's burger. I'm going to Shanahan's today. There's no Hardee's in New York, so I've got to fucking hit that up. You got to see, you got to have your priorities right. So, but it's about living life, and like even if you look at my stories yesterday, I went to a sick Mexican restaurant. I ate healthy. I got a fajita. I got the corn fajita because it's only 80 calories versus 200 for a wheat tortilla. I had like, I didn't even finish all. I gave some Elise my chicken protein. I had the steak and I had the shrimp. Last night for dinner, I had like 3 sushi rolls. It was delicious. But the rest of my day, I had a protein shake and I had 2 legendary Pop-Tarts, and I was just really pick my spots throughout the day. Legendary Pop-Tarts are like 20 grams of protein, 7 grams of fiber. They're not overly processed. So the rest of my day was really smart in what I picked and choose, because I treat a diet like a budget. That's what it is, right? Like if you're gonna go make an expenditure, you're gonna go to like Louis Vuitton, well maybe the rest of the week, you're like, if you're like, oh I wanna buy these, and your girlfriend's like, no you cannot get like the newest Nikes, you just bought the $3,000 Louis Vuitton. Same thing here. If I know I'm gonna go to dinner tonight, I'm gonna have like 2,000 calories from that, the rest of my day has to be chill, right? So it's the same theory in use. But if go back to your primary question, rice, I think is just so easily digestible. It's minimally processed. It does go through a stage of process. Again, being processed doesn't mean anything without context. But rice, I find, is a really good carbohydrate for people to have, particularly white rice. If you're doing it, typically I would not say rice unless you're looking for an energy source. I would tell most people if you're looking for carbohydrate sources, you want to rely on fruits and vegetables, and then your other carb source should actually be, and I know people are going to think this is controversial, but something that's a high fiber product. So like I'm very big on Mission carb wraps, 15 grams of fiber per wrap. If you can get fiber up, we know that listen to what I'm about to tell you, every 10 grams of fiber daily decreases all symptoms mortality by 10%. Every 10 grams. So you know what all symptoms mortality means? All symptoms mortality means cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's. Those are all symptoms across the fucking board. Now, will having fiber prevent you from getting lung cancer? Of course fucking it won't, all right? But most of the things that are correlated with diet, and most disease, about 70% of disease is caloric. People don't like to say that word caloric, they like to say food, but it's actually caloric. There are people who, for example, there's a study of a gentleman doing a case study. I'm not suggesting this just here. This is hyperbole. It's meant to be like hype, but there's a study of a Nebraskan dietitian. He ate Twinkies every day, and he went down 30 pounds, and he dropped his cholesterol. Why? Because he just got his BMI down. Number one thing you can do for your testosterone, drop your BMI. Number one thing you can do for sexual health, drop your BMI. Number one thing you can do for just, what's the number one correlation for heart disease? Obesity. Number one correlation for all symptoms cancer, obesity. Number one correlation for diabetes, obesity. Number one correlation for erectile dysfunction, obesity. So, and let's just face it, like just how you're treated and how people treat you, it matters. You know, like how you look on Instagram, like, you know, like all these things, like how you look is how people feel about, like, I remember I had a ex-girlfriend from years ago, and she was foreign. And she said to me, she said, everybody knows you're truthful. This is a body that doesn't lie. Meaning that I just had integrity. She's foreign, so she spoke like that. But she meant you have integrity. People know that you show up, right? Because you can't do that if you don't. You look at Brian, he's got to show up. Eric's not missing workouts. You know that, right? He's not missing workouts. It speaks to his integrity, right? So I think rice, though, if I was just looking for that, that's your carbohydrate. That's a good source for
Go get some rice.
rice. Phenomenal. And I would really carb up if I do an event. And understand that glycogen will burn very, very quickly, like way quicker than you think. It stores for about 36 hours. So if I was going to go for a race on a Saturday morning, I would start eating it 24 to 36 hours before start loading rice.
Jake, so going back to fiber for a second, so you said it's decreasing all-cause mortality, but what's actually going on? Is it a precursor to the secondary effect of not overeating, and what overeating does to those, like what's actually happening?
So the bigger thing that happens is when anything affects like stuff like basal dilation and stuff like that, it's going to reduce. So that kind of slowing of digestion and stuff like that, it's dropping blood pressure, it's dropping cholesterol, and it's dropping health markers that are very, very important. I mean, short term, the number one thing you could do if you came to me and you said, hey, like I have high cholesterol, I have high blood pressure. First of all, consider medication if it's high. I know people hate that answer, but you have to be alive to play the game. So take the medication in the meantime, and then you can drop off it once you fix the problem. Okay, you don't want to have a stroke in the meantime. You don't want to have a heart attack in the meantime. So actually fix the symptom, and then go fix the cause. And the number one thing I tell you to go right away to do is get in the sauna. Sauna is more effective than short term, just short term. These are different things, okay? So, right, like versus long term. So like long term cardio is going to be more beneficial for blood pressure, but it's going to take more time to ramp up and cause that effect. Short term, getting in the sauna. I mean, if you're a man and you're in your 40s, you should be spending an hour in the sauna broken up into 2 to 3 sessions a week. People are huge on cold plunging right now. Great, I'm happy for you. We had a great conversation today about its possible effects, but we have way more documented stuff about sauna. And so until I see more documented stuff about basal dilation, which we talked about and it looks like it's coming out there, but until we have more, I'd say if you had blood pressure or something like that, get in the sauna, because we know 60 minutes at 170 degrees broken up in 2 to 3 sessions will reduce blood pressure. So fucking effective. You can get in there and walk out with lower blood pressure. It's wild. So if that's a concern for you, and then obviously just fucking cardio. Zone 2. Yeah. Zone 2 is about 110 to 130 beats per minute. You should be doing 150 minutes of zone 2 cardio a week. And it doesn't have to look crazy. Like you guys saw me, I didn't go for the runs yesterday. I went on the hill with you guys. My heart rate got to at tops on that whole walk 115. Most of the time it was like 110. Perfect. I was like loving it. I was like, this is awesome. I got my zone 2 cardio in, and I would suggest, I usually very frequently will walk on an incline that's not high enough that it won't bother my hamstring, because your hamstrings are very fast twitch muscles, so they'll tire out quicker. I want to save my hamstrings for my like heavy deadlifts, my RDLs, those things. So, but I walk at an incline fast enough and I walk a fast enough pace that I get my heart rate to 120. And a lot of times I'll take calls. Like I'll be on the phone with these guys. I always do it, and I'll talk to them, and we'll take calls and I'll do it, or we'll build out programming or stuff like that. So, yeah.
I bet a decent number of people sort of already heard you speak to this, but can you just talk about the concept and then application of the time protein?
Yeah.
I think some of us
Sure.
are solving for a certain number, Jake, but we're kind of fumbling
Sure.
through the actual.
So let's start with a certain number. So nobody needs more than, I mean, really like, I'll give you the absolute biggest number possible. Melissa was just telling me how nice my handwriting was.
Well, you're writing sideways.
Yeah, I know. 0.85 times your body weight. Now, you hear everybody tell you 1 gram of protein per pound. Respectfully, it's because people are dumb. So they don't want you to have to go 0.8 times my body weight. So it really is, that's the most you can do with it. There's no shame though in having 1 gram of protein per pound, and it's very actionable. And I've been on IG long enough, I know how the world works now. So 1 gram of protein per pound, guys, but it's really 0.85 is the most. For most of you, if you even hit 0.8, you'd be fine. Like Brian probably needs 0.85, Eric probably needs 0.85, I probably need 0.85, maybe Elise, the people like that need that kind of amount of protein, but that's it actually. And then the other issue with protein is your body doesn't have a mechanism to store protein, right? So I'll walk into a quick question, but people get confused here all the time when they talk about, oh, I primarily burn glucose, or I more primarily burn fat. And people are like, yeah, I primarily burn fat. They feel so good about themselves. If you primarily burn fat, it also means you store more fat. If you burn primarily glucose, it means you also store less fat. So whatever energy system you're using is fine, but like long-term, fat is a more reliable energy source because you will burn through your glucose more. But carbs, athletes eat carbs. Like athletes perform better on carbs. We've known this forever. It's still the truth. Nothing's changed besides like hype and fad. But having said that, protein, the amount you need to have, say 1 gram per pound, let's say you weigh 200 pounds, now you need 200 grams of protein. Your body doesn't have a mechanism to store protein. It stores fat, we all know that unfortunately, right? Okay, it does have a mechanism for storing carbohydrates. You have glucose, you have sucrose, you have fructose, you have lactose. Depending on the carbohydrate source, it will break down to one of those and then it will store differently into glycogen. So once it's stored as glycogen, your body can utilize that for a source of energy. Whereas protein either gets utilized or it's gone. And that window is complex because it depends on also what you've ate already in the day, what you're eating with it. Remember how I said fiber slows down digestion, dietary fat slows down digestion? So you have a window of about 2 to 6 hours to eat protein, right? So within that window, I typically just call it 3 to 4 hours. I kind of take the outliers in there, and I try to eat protein every 3 to 4 hours. So if I was a 200-pound guy, I might eat 50 grams of protein 4 times a day, or I might eat 40 grams of protein 5 times a day. And the truth is what I do for me is I'm about 240 pounds, so I eat 50 grams of protein 5 times a day. Here's where people get caught up. That's hard to do. It's an acquired skill. For me, I can get my protein and my fiber in with my eyes closed and I don't even think about it. For most of you, it's a new ball you're juggling, and then on top of it, you might have other priorities. I have other priorities, but I've just gotten so good that this is like so on my back burner. But what I would try to do is try to break it up as much as possible. Brian, I think, breaks it up in 3 meals or 4? 3? So Brian does 3. And look at Brian. Does Brian look good? We know he looks good. So why? Because a suboptimal program done consistently is better than an optimal program done inconsistently. And most of you need to hear that. A suboptimal program done consistently is better than an optimal program done inconsistently. If you inconsistently do something and you have to start and stop, you're better off just chipping away at it every single fucking day. It's the same thing you do with your career, it's the same thing you've done with your retirement, it's the same thing you've done with your kids. You'd much rather be like, I had good days, all 7 days of my kids were good, rather than being like, I had 4 very good days and 3 really fucking shit. I mean, I don't even know if I should be a parent anymore kind of days. You'd rather have 7 good days with your kids than that kind of a life. People don't apply that to fitness. I told Brian that we talk about this, like when it comes to fitness, it's like people, they view it, it's all or nothing mentality. It's the same thing with eating. It's either I'm on a diet or I'm not. And like, that's how you fuck up. That's how you never accumulate wealth. It's how you never accrue anything. Because it's like if I went to the car dealership and I'm like, yeah, I don't want an Audi. No, I don't want a Honda. I either am going to get a Ferrari or a Lambo, or fuck this shit, I'll take the bus. Like, you don't think that way. Nobody's like, I'm driving a Porsche Turbo S, or I'm riding a bicycle. You don't do that. So you can't approach nutrition that way, and that's what people literally do with nutrition. And so I would say how you break this up is dependent on how are you. Optimally, it's probably somewhere around 40 to 50 grams every 3-4 hours, and that's where you'll need it. For somebody who's a little bit smaller female, maybe you can break it up into a little less grams per serving. Is there an answer how much protein you can digest in one meal? There is, but it's too complex to answer simply because like I could probably have more protein on my first meal a day because more of that protein will go through degradation and become glucose, so I want more of it. And if I've already had protein only 3 hours ago, I can probably absorb less because I just don't have a room for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
What about protein source?
So that's such a great question, dude, and this is actually something that we're constantly looking at and constantly like kind of touting. So there's a concept called bioavailability, right? So bioavailable. So what does that mean? It means that protein is made up of amino acids. There are 20 amino acids, 9 of them are essential. The 9 essential amino acids, okay? There are 9 that are essential. What does it mean to have an essential amino acid? It means that your body doesn't make it itself. You're reliant on diet to get those essential amino acids in. So bioavailability of protein, we actually don't think it's that big of a deal. It's so crazy, like Elise got her food science degree and she went through so much time looking at pea protein and like what the absorption rate was and all this stuff. And it turns out now they're like, psych, you know, it's not that right. So but you can eat pea protein and actually achieve muscle protein synthesis. And we used to not think that you could eat like a vegetarian source and be able to, we used to think that we only had to have essential amino acids. So if I was looking for a quality source of protein, like if I was just looking for it, like there are certain things that don't fucking work. BCAAs, branched chain amino acids, do not fucking work. It's been proven over and over again. EAAs may work or they may not. Right? I'm in the camp of I don't buy them and I don't take them because we don't know yet. And we thought that BCAAs were going to work, branched chain amino acids were going to work, and then it was like, fuck, we fucked up, guys, it doesn't work. Right? So I'm not going to spend time or money on, we fucked up, guys, I don't know. Because remember what I said earlier, like if you want to build muscle, you better fucking, especially if you're a 40-year-old fucking guy, you better treat it like it's your part-time fucking job. It better be your career. So if you're banking on maybe, that's not going to cut it. Like, you're never going to be like, shit, honey, I got way more jacked than I meant to. Like, that. What do you, and don't even get me started with the guys who are like, have way more body fat and think they're secretly jacked underneath. You're not. If you lost all that body fat, you would be way small. The other day, Brian, I had my shirt off and Brian's like, you look a little skinny. And he was like joking with me, ball busting me. He was also a little serious. Like, I look skinnier than I did when I had 10 pounds more fat. And everybody does. You're not as jacked as you think, right? You probably are fatter than you think. That's why, again, we start the message with my story of growing up in small town America. Because it's the truth, though. It just is. Like, for most of us, you have way less quality tissue than you think you do. And it's just because of the surface area of fat versus muscle. Actually, we're doing a reel on Monday about it, about surface area of fat versus muscle. How muscle is denser, and therefore they both weigh the same. A pound is a pound, regardless of what it is. But there's so much less surface tension for muscle than there is for fat because it's so much denser, right? So if I answer your question simply, animal protein sources, lean, chicken, beef, leaner portions of that, phenomenal. Turns out pea protein works incredibly well. Whey protein works incredibly well. Those would be kind of like my, edamame works incredibly well. Cottage cheese, Greek yogurt works very well. Fish works very well. But there's ample amount of sources that work surprisingly well. I would not bank on anything in the supplement area yet that works. Creatine is phenomenal. Creatine is a substrate of arginine. And we know that creatine increases. So when you talk about, I'm going to use big words now, when you talk about muscle mass, there's what's known as sarcoplasmic. I'm just using these words so you know what I'm talking about. And then there's myofibrillar. And myofibrillar is actually cross-sectional tissue, and sarcoplasmic is water stored in the muscle cell. Don't sleep on that. You want water in your muscle cell. That helps you perform better and look better, actually. So a large part of your actual muscle mass, about 80% of your muscles, is actually water. That's why if somebody asked me, like, could I cut 20 pounds by tomorrow? I could. I could cut 20 pounds in the next 48 hours easily. And anybody can. You have so much water in you to cut. And by the way, you could do that safely. I'm talking about cutting 10% of your body weight safely. If you get below that, that's when you start to like affect your kidneys because you've dehydrated yourself so much. But you could probably safely cut 10% of your body weight tomorrow. It's not weight. It's not fat. It's not tissue. It's water. And some of that water is stored in the muscle cell and some not. So bioavailability, protein largely overestimated. And most of your protein sources are going to work. Yogurt, cottage cheese, fish, poultry, beef, stuff like that, all phenomenal options. Edamame, phenomenal option. Soy, people get honest with me about soy all the time. I mean, you're out of your mind. You know how much soy you would have to eat in order to affect your estrogen levels? It's a preposterous amount of soy in order to affect that. Like, you're not that sensitive. So.
Fiber sources and guidelines, similar to protein.
Sure, so the number one things is like fruit and vegetables because they're just so low calorie. And if I was to look at it, like a lot of your really green vegetables, broccoli, asparagus, green beans, peas, Brussels sprouts, carrots, all artichoke hearts, all phenomenally high and very easy way. When they say you should be having 5 cups of fruits and vegetables, that's really just, it's one of the few things that the government ever fucking said about like pyramid guidelines that was accurate, but it's still a simplification, right? It's still like, there's no magic like you had 5 fruits. It's just a really good way to get enough fiber. And we talk about powder forms are great. I'll go there a second. But so let's just start with fruit and vegetables because there's so many benefits to having it, even besides that. The antioxidants that are in there, the micro and macronutrients are so much higher. But you do need to do it with that, absolutely. So artichokes, oranges. Oh, God. You're going to have to start that over. Okay. Berries. Berries. Massive, massive. Berries. You know what the second leading source of antioxidants in the United States of America are?
Blueberry berries.
You think that? You think Americans are that healthy? You think that's their second leading source of antioxidants in America? Wine is the second leading source of antioxidants in America. But it's not because of wine, it's because of grapes. Grapes are an amazing source of number one leading source of antioxidants is coffee. Okay? So grapes are phenomenal, oranges are phenomenal, apples are phenomenal. All excellent bananas, all excellent sources of fiber. Powder is incredibly helpful. Selenium husk. Selenium husk is an amazing way to get. There's coming out with more and more powders. What's the powder you like? So what is it? What do you remember what it is? So there's phenomenal fiber powders out there that are useful that you can use. So will help you hit those goals. I like certain products, Mission Carb Wraps, 647. Go look for a high fiber bread.
How many grams of fiber we supposed to have?
So when we talked about like where it's supposed to be in general, I'd say for most people the recommendation is somewhere between 40 and 50 grams. You know what you have to think about it. The average American has 15 grams of fiber a day. We get clients all the time. We start having them track fiber, and they're like 10 grams a day or something like that. But if I added in 2 tablespoons of selenium husk, 15 grams of fiber.
What is it?
Selenium husk. Never heard of selenium husk?
No. What is that?
See, here's the thing. No, let me explain something to you. Let me explain something to you, okay? Everybody in this fucking room has heard about EAAs, which is a supplement that we aren't 100% sure works. Okay? Everybody in the room has heard about some other form of creatine other than monohydrate. Like, should I be which, by the way, they're all shit. Creatine monohydrate is the only one that we have the most scientific research. You know why they don't just sell creatine monohydrate? Because they can make more money off the other ones, because they can charge more. Creatine monohydrate still saturates the cells more effectively than any other form of creatine. They just can't make fucking money off of it. Right? And that's what you have to understand all the time. When you're selling a product, that's the best way you can make money. I sell my service, right? I have a team. I have Elise works for me. I have Michelle works for me. It's very hard to scale a service. It's very easy to scale a product. You can make a lot of money. So when like Andrew Huberman's like, buy Athletic Greens that all has ineffective dosages of every single product in there, there's a reason, because it's easy money to make. And listen, no power to them. Like, God bless them. Like, go make your money. But just understand, like, you haven't heard of selenium husk, and we know that 20 grams of selenium husk daily decreases cholesterol by 25%, right? So just understand that. So 15 grams, you can get right there. If you had like 647 bread, 2 slices, you got another 15 grams. And then if you got like 4 pieces of fruit, 4 pieces of vegetables, you got another 30 grams right there, you're 60 grams of fiber. But you have to make a actual conscious decision, and you actually have to go to pursue these things. Like, life is hard. It will swallow you up if you don't fight against the tide. So you actually have to like think about these things, and this is the way it is. Like, even like we talk about my business, like I have to like talk to the videographer, shoots something, I have to look at what the videographer just shot, watch through with it, make sure it was good. If I just count on the videographer, if I just say, hey, I'm paying you $60 an hour, I'm gonna get shit handed back to me, right? Even if I'm paying her that money. It's the same thing. If you just like sit down and be like, oh, I'm just gonna buy this, it checks the box. No, you have to think about everything you're doing in your life, and you have to take it. But the nice thing is, after you spend the hour thinking about it, you're never gonna have to do it again. Like, once you actually sit down and map this out, spend an hour, map it out, pay someone to spend an hour and map it out. Pay me to spend an hour and map it out. Do it, and then you actually have it, and you move forward with your life, and you're in a good spot. Everybody I get done with, they always say, I learned how to eat, right? And that's really the concept, like going in and actually learning how to do this, because it's a skill set. Most people, I always say all the time, like every man, I'm gonna sound chauvinistic, I have like 4 sisters, I have all female employees, but I think every person should go and take jiu-jitsu. Like, go do a week of jiu-jitsu, because you'll walk out learning how to fight better, and for the rest of your life you'll understand leverage or where your shoulders should be or things like that. Everybody should go shoot a gun and like go take some gun classes, because you'll walk out with such an education. Like taking a driver's course, you'll walk out with such an education. Most people, I think everybody in America should hire a personal trainer, at least like buy one package of somebody you respect and go through it, because you probably have no fucking clue how to lift, bro. I'm sorry, you probably think, you know how many people, like guys like me, who think that this is a full range of motion squat? Like, this is a full range of motion squat. Like, you know how many people, and by the way, do you understand that if you don't do that, like how much you minimize the effectiveness of your squat, or like don't know simple cues? So I think most people, again, I think the biggest thing I can take away from today is pursue this stuff and sit down and think about it. Another great...
Breaking down equally, like should it be broken down like protein, like 10-10-10, or does it...
You can have it in shots, but if you have too much fiber in one sitting, nobody's gonna want to be around you. You're gonna be on the toilet. So I would break it up. Black beans, incredibly high in fiber. Most beans are, but black beans are the highest. But beans are incredibly high in fiber. But I would try to break up it throughout the day into like each of your meals. But there's no partitioning of nutrients if you do that, right?
What about like hemp seeds versus like fish oil?
Sure. So that's the big thing right now. So there's 11 omega-3s, right? You hear about fatty 3. The only 3 that we talk about in the US is EPA, DHA, and ALA. 2 of those are from like fish oil, right? EPA and DHA. EPA drives down triglycerides and pushes it down. So if you have high triglycerides, the easiest thing you can do is get more EPA in your diet, which there's products, I know I'm gonna sound like I'm big pharma here, but like icosapent is a product made now that's actually made from fish oil that's just EPA in concentrated dosages, and it will drive down your cholesterol. If you have high triglycerides and you also have high cholesterol, you just wanna have the EPA. If you have fine cholesterol but you have high triglycerides, you can get both DHA and EPA, which means you can just buy generic fish oil, because DHA will raise your LDL, also could help raise your HDL, which is your good cholesterol, and will drive down your triglycerides. So it's just kind of like a double-edged sword, and it's particularly when you want to use it. ALA comes from hemp seeds, flax seeds, these things. This is where people, like, I have to again start the message is like I grew up in the middle of nowhere, because I'm like breaking people's hearts. But like ALA is not a readily digestible source of omega-3s. It's not very efficient. When you take hemp seeds or flax seed or things like this, it's not going to translate as effectively to your labs. People go nuts, and I'm gonna tell you this, but like when you go and you buy these fucking overpriced eggs, if you're doing it because you love animals, I have a dog. My dog is like my child. Like I picked up my dog the other day. He's 9 years old. We had to remove some of his teeth. I just had he just survived cancer last year. I just realized like, oh my God, he's gonna die someday. And I was like, really had a hard time right home. This dog's been with me since I had a Nissan Altima. He's like driving around in a Range Rover now. He's got a fucking refrigerator in the middle of his car. And I'm like, but this dog loved me when I was fat and I was broke and I was like a just total wreck of a human being. And I'm like driving with him. And the thing is like, just as a nutshell, like just understand, like if you love animals, then buy the expensive eggs. But if you think it's fucking doing anything for you, it's not. Because all that the expensive eggs have is more ALA And you've got to remember something, it's 90 fucking calories. So take a percentile of the milligrams that are in that versus the other one. It's a significant dose. It's statistically significant, the dosage of ALA, normal eggs versus grass-fed eggs, but it's not a statistically significant dose enough that it affects your labs. It doesn't get through bioavailability to your body. So maybe if you were eating 20 eggs a day, and you were trying to be like, this is going to help my cholesterol, well, then maybe it's worth buying it. You know what would be smarter than buying the more expensive eggs? Buying the regularly priced eggs and then buying some flaxseed. And by the way, still, it wouldn't have that great of absorption. So if you're looking to improve your triglycerides, it's DHA and it's EPA, right? That's what you want to do. Those are the omega-3s you want to count on. And I know people love flaxseed and chia seeds and all that stuff. It's fine. And they are a moderate source of fiber, but not bonkers.
If you're eating multiple servings of fish in a week, do you think that you should also supplement with omega-3s?
So no. But here's the problem that you run into when you're trying to just eat salmon to take care of your triglycerides. Mercury. So if you're relying on a diet that's just very heavily in mercury, then you're going to end up having issues. Some people are like, why are you going to have fish oil when you just have omega-3s? Because we live in the year 2023 and there are valid options, right? Like, so I'm not telling you that. I'm not telling you that, but I am telling you that omega-3 is just as good as salmon if you're trying to fix your triglycerides. But at the same time, if you enjoy salmon, have at it. If you enjoy sea bass, have at it. There are some fish that have lower. There are some things to realize. Like if I have shrimp, for example, it's going to help with omega-3s. It will increase my LDL. It will also help my HDL, but it will increase your LDL. And LDL is one of the single most important factors in how long you live life. It's an independent health marker. We used to look at cholesterol as a whole. HDL probably doesn't mean shit. Total cholesterol, not as big a deal, but LDL fucking matters, your LDL. And I have a guy on Scott's name's Carnivore MD, probably people follow him, and he'll be like, LDL doesn't matter. It's a very small particle. It's nanograms over deciliter. Okay, Paul, so why is testosterone only nanograms over deciliter? Because that's how we measure it. But how come testosterone levels matter? How come we talk about that as being one of your tenths to a long life? They're both measured in nanograms over deciliter. They're both very small particles, and they both have a very big impact. And then he'll point to like in 2014, they didn't even care about LDL. Yeah, that's because science is advanced, right? You remember that?
Creatine.
Yeah.
What's the lowest age, the youngest age someone can take it? And can my parents start to
Yeah, your parents actually should take it more than your kids. Your parents should actually take it more than your kids. Geriatric population, we've had plenty of research now that we're doing creatine with geriatric population. Your parents should 100% jump into it, Brian. How many, 5 times a day?
5 grams.
Load me up. Yeah, 5 grams a day. 5 grams a day. 5 grams a day is saturated dose, and it will become level in your bloodstream in about 7 to 10 days. I didn't have creatine the last 2 days since I've been here, so the next couple of days I go home, I'll probably take like 15 grams of creatine the next couple of days. Okay. Load me up. Okay. Kids, it's perfectly fine. No, it's perfectly fine because it's a substrate of arginine. I don't do kid stuff, anything like involving like nutrition behind it. But yes, it's perfectly fine. It's definitely fine for high schoolers. I don't know why 3-year-olds would take it or 5-year-olds would take it, but like when your kids get into high school, 100%.
High school, we were always told, don't take it.
It's such horseshit. Such horseshit.
Why were they saying that?
Because they were concerned what used to happen, and like respectfully, like I think you said it about your creatinine levels raising. Your creatinine levels are not your creatine levels. Those are two different things. So when you have creatine, that doesn't affect your creatinine levels. Your creatinine and your bun ratio are independent markers of your pancreas, which isn't the same thing as creatine. But creatine can raise creatinine levels. They also used to tell you that if you had X amount of protein, it would raise your creatinine levels, and that you have to have an extreme amount. The reason is that protein has an additional bond of nitrogen, and so it can raise your nitrogen in your blood urethra nitrogen, so you piss out the nitrogen, which we're not concerned about anymore. You have to have a massive amount of protein for it to actually be problematic.
So hot topic right now is longevity.
Uh-huh.
What are 3 things or 5 things that you can recommend to increase longevity?
I'll give you 5. Okay, number 1, first and foremost, BMI, all right? I took it down, now it says bioavailability. Pretend that still says BMI, all right? Number 1, BMI, keeping that BMI in the right place, your total body fat. Don't have too much body fat. People who have between 18 and 22% body fat lead the longest life. Don't be like me and Brian and Eric, okay? We're head cases, all right? People with moderate body fat, they live longer, probably because they have less stressful lives and they're less like type A personality. Those two are supposed to laugh. They're not laughing. They're like this fucking asshole. Yeah. But one, Yeah, exactly. 18 to 22%. But I'm going to be so heartbroken if it's Pudding and Brian. Man. 18 to 20. 18 to 22% body fat, right? So that's keeping your BMI in the right spot is number one. Number two, and again, it doesn't mean anything without context, but reduce the processed food that you eat, minimize it as much as possible. Rely on a diet of single ingredient foods. That's the best way I can say it. Eat foods with a single ingredient. Black beans have what? Black beans. Okay, yes, fiber. But black beans only have black beans. Apples have what? Apples. Almonds have what? Almonds. Salmon has what? Salmon. 3, sleep at least 7 hours a night. Sleep is incredibly vital. The minimum adult recommendation is 7 hours. Sleep 7 hours a night. Number 4, exercise. Very simply, minimum recommendations, 150 minutes of moderate cardio a week or 75 minutes of intense cardio a week. 150 minutes of moderate cardio a week or 75 minutes of intense cardio a week. Minimum recommendation, weight training at least 90 minutes a week. Should you be doing more than that? Yes, but those are the minimums, and does most of America not do that? I know that's not the people in this room, but be active. Number 5, have deep forming relationships with people. Stress management is incredibly important. Remember, I don't care how much money you're making. I don't care, even myself, like when I started to get more successful, I remember one time my dog pooped in the back of my Range Rover and I got so mad at him. And it's one of the biggest regrets of my life. I'm not even kidding you. It's one of the biggest regrets of my life because as I got more money and I started being continuously successful, I was like, doesn't mean anything to me. Like my dog and my girlfriend are so much more important. So when you're hard on the people in your life because you're trying to pursue some goal like lower body fat or more money, understand that stuff really doesn't matter. And if I said that when I was 18, I would have slapped the shit out of myself. Like 18-year-old Jake would be so disgusted that I said that just now, that relationships are the most important thing in life, but they are. So yeah, but just remember like how important that is. Yes. Yes. So, but in all seriousness, like remember, because the people who have more social relationships, those are the people who deal with trauma better. They deal with breakups better. They deal with injuries better. Having that social network are the people who recover better. So, and just finding some form of stress management, whether it's breath work, something like that, whether it's doing some sort of I go to therapy, go to couples therapy once a week. I do guided meditation. I really work on, just because I came from such an environment that was so painful, I really work now on just embracing how happy my life is. Like I'm getting in the sauna, like I get to work out, like I get to have, like, I try to really own that happiness. So that's very important. I'll give you a 6th one. And this is just for certain people in the room, reduce how much alcohol you drink. Okay? Alcohol is a class A carcinogen. It is on par with smoking cigarettes. It is on par with getting in a tanning bed. Okay? I understand that it is not socially. I have a Casa Azul from time to time. I enjoy it. More often than not, I have a weed gummy. Reduce the alcohol in your life. Those are 6 things.
The body fat range for longevity for women?
It's higher, yeah. So higher body fat, probably around 25, 26% for women in that range, right? So yes, higher for women, yes, correct. Do you want me to talk for one more minute? You want me to cut?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so I would just say this to you really quickly with training, which is very important. Brian actually said to me, he's like, I want you to talk longer because people have so many questions. So with training, the biggest thing you can do, again, guys, is quantitate. It's a dose-related stimulus. What does that mean? If I want to grow my chest, I probably need to do between 10, I'll just give you my real number. Probably 15 really fucking hard sets of chest a week. Like I have to go train and do somewhere between like 6 and 8 sets per session. That's where I get the number 15, because it's maybe 7, maybe 8, maybe 6. If you're telling me you can do more than 6 really hard sets, come with me this afternoon and come lift quads with us. I promise you most of you will be dead after 3 sets. And that's just how I train, because it allows me to train intensely and then move on to the next thing. So I warm up, I get my body, the core body temperature raising, and then I really train hard. It's a dose-related stimulus. Same thing with running. The way running works is we have what's called an SFA, stimulus fatigue, right? So your stimulus to fatigue to adaptation. And so when you're dealing with these things, SFR, stimulus to fatigue ratio. But when you deal with like running, when you run long distance, you accrue fatigue over time. You're intended to accrue that fatigue week over week or week, because in order for your body to make adaptations from running, you have to be in a fatigued state. If it's too easy, your body won't adapt from running. If it's something like hypertrophy, you need a little less fatigue. You kind of want to train hard and then rest. You want to train hard and then rest. It's like a refractory period. I'm going to go do a really fucking hard set, and then I'm going to take 3 minutes and go do another really fucking hard set, right? You could superset things, like maybe if you did chest and then did like back like 3 minutes later, you have a little bit more recovery time when you superset them. But for that, you need to be in fatigue to accumulate it. Something like strength, you don't need quite as much fatigue. Something like a technique, like tennis, you can play tennis every fucking day and get better at tennis, right? It doesn't require a lot of adaptation for like skill set stuff. Sprinting is lower, you actually need less fatigue. Less fatigue to make adaptations. You shouldn't be that fatigued. If you're trying to Olympic lift heavy weight, you don't want to be very fatigued. It's not beneficial. Strength training, you can be a little bit more fatigued, but you don't need as much volume. Like I can go to the gym today and do 4 sets of chest, and if they're really smart sets, I can get stronger. I cannot build muscle probably doing 4 hard sets of chest. I probably have to build somewhere between like 6 and 8 really hard sets, and hard. Meaning like when people talk about, anybody here familiar with like reps in reserve? Or perceived rate of exertion. I understand it's the best we can do, but it's such a bullshit fucking concept, because if you go watch me and you see me train, like I watched Elise train yesterday, and her concept of our reps in reserve, she's pretty much dead. Like for me, when I train quads and I have like, say there's 1 rep left, I was doing a squat the other day and I got to the 3rd rep, and I was like, I remember when this is where I would have